Hello everyone, welcome back to Major Hi-Fi. I'm Luke. Today we have a pair of IEMs from Fiio. These are the FH5s. To be honest, I have not had a lot of experience with Fiio IEMs before, but this was kind of I think I've tried some of the other ones, but this was really my first time diving into one. And these are quite interesting because they are semi-open, so they are kind of open back IEMs in a way, and they are also hybrid IEMs, so they are both dynamic and balanced armature. So yeah, let's go on ahead and unbox these. Very fancy. These run for $269 by the way, so definitely in, like I always say, a very saturated point of the market right now. A lot of 200 to 300 IEMs coming out, so there is definitely some stiff competition. First things first, we get this nice leather case, which you can close with this magnet. It's got a nice big pocket here with little kind of loops that you could put around your IEMs when you want to store them in here. And then we've also got one of these MMCX disconnector tools, which I've seen increasingly in more headphone packages, which are quite nice. We then get a 2.5 and 4.4 millimeter adapter. They're not really an adapter, I guess. You can actually attach this to the plug, so you fully transform the plug into a new termination. You're not just plugging one termination into the other. You get a cleaning brush, and then we've got quite a selection of ear tips here. We've got foam, silicone, vocal, bass ear tips, all that kind of stuff. Definitely a good selection of ear tips going on. And then here we have the FH5s IEMs. As you can see, they have this cool kind of ribbing or gills on the outside, which is the semi-open part. And they're just a really, really cool looking IEM. Super high tech looking, very shimmery, shiny kind of bronze outer like coating going on here, and then a just general like, you know, matte black finish on the rest of it. But overall a very aesthetically pleasing IEM for sure. Nice clear braided cable going on here too, with you know, this swappable termination that is also just a really cool sturdy metal outer casing on it. As you can tell from the front here, they have a fit that I'm sure many of you have seen before on other, you know, companies or models or whatever. Nothing out of the ordinary, and that's a good thing in my opinion. I just want a standard, good fitting, snug IEM, and this is that. Settles in really quickly and feels comfortable, easy to forget, and, you know, put into your subconscious that you are actually wearing something and just enjoy your music. So yeah, very into the 2021, you know, earbud of the future going on here. But let's talk about how they sound, right? All right, so I'm getting a little bit worn out of the same format on the soundstage, bass, mids, highs, all that. It's like, I feel like there's maybe a little bit more interesting way to talk about a pair of earbuds. I feel like I probably want to keep that really thorough description, especially for, you know, pairs that are in the 900, thousands and whatever, that really high price range. Of course, I want to pick those apart. But with these IEMs, and honestly maybe even the more expensive ones, I just feel like maybe being so fragmented in the description is just, I'm not sure. So I'm just gonna try being a little bit more sort of freeform today. And if you hate it, comment below, and I won't do it again. But if not, then maybe we'll keep things this way sometimes or switch it up every once in a while. But I just felt like it was time for a change. Before I get into the sound signature of these IEMs, I'm gonna talk about what I heard at first. What I didn't notice until a while of listening to them. I was not being very observant. I was just trying to kind of like take in the sound. But these have tuning switches. If you get the camera, these teeny tiny switches allow us to alter the frequency response. And that is really awesome. I do think there's probably other IEMs that have this, though I haven't used one, definitely at least not in this price range, that has this capability. So I'm gonna get into that a little later, but let's first of all just talk about what they sound like without using the tuning switches. So when I first put these on, I noticed a few things. The first thing I noticed was that they were definitely just attack was the main event going on here. So there was a lot of really hard impact going on from low to high in terms of snappy detail and a lot of punch. This is mostly a very good thing. It makes for great definition, great detail retrieval. It's only going to be maybe not perfect for certain styles of music. Maybe if you're listening to something that's got a ton of, like, I don't know, certain like electronic genres, certain types of hip hop that have really sharp snare drums. You know, what else can I think of? Like anything that is already very attack heavy because the attack is being accentuated can sometimes come off just a tad harsh. Nothing monumentally harsh, but just to be mindful of if you find yourself, wincing at certain sounds or earbuds, if you have sensitive ears, then maybe just be a little bit mindful of that. But that's also going to be something that is audible mostly at higher volumes. So if you don't really pump up your volume that high usually, then I wouldn't worry too much about these being like too snappy for your taste. And for a lot of people, there is no such thing as too snappy, so that's good news. Because these are semi-open, they should have a wider soundstage than a normal pair of IEMs, which I was expecting from them, but I was also skeptical because we see lots of gimmicks on the market to make us buy things. But these really do deliver on that promise, thank God, because they just stretch way further than a normal IEM, especially in this price range does. I didn't realize that these were semi-open until I was a few songs in, if I'm being honest. I was like reading up on them and whatnot while I was listening. They do obviously have a little bit more bleed to other people because of the fact that there is going to be some sound coming out. Nothing absurd. I had someone else try them on and I listened from outside. It wasn't anything like I could make out every single word and lyric or whatnot. Also, if people hear your music, then you're doing them a favor by providing them with your amazing music taste, aren't you? But if you're someone who's insecure about the music taste, maybe you haven't fully accepted that you just love Britney Spears and you don't want the world to know, then I don't know, maybe don't wear these on public transit or something. But overall, they're not gonna really emit much extra bleed than any other run-of-the-mill headphone is these days. If you're really into bass, these do have a pretty beefy bass response. It doesn't feel like a level or type of bass I've never heard before. I think I used the term neutral bassy in a different review I did recently, just about kind of having a IEM where you're like, yeah, there's a good amount of low end going on here, but it's not like an abnormal amount of low end. It's just a typical like bassy response. However, it is handled very, very well, so that's what's good. But the timbre and leveling of it is not out of the ordinary. However, like I kind of touched on before, the attack, the impact of it is definitely above average and kind of in its own realm of specificity. It's every brand has their own sound and signature to what makes their headphones different, and I feel like for these ones the definition was really what brought them home. In terms of mids and highs, these definitely do get a bit of brightness in both areas, though it's a bit more understated in the high end, which is not super overtly bright. So this brings me to what I mentioned earlier about those tuning switches on the back of these. I was listening to them and I was thinking to myself, these are good. I really enjoy what I'm getting from these. They have a nice sound. They're pretty balanced. But I was starting to have a few complaints. I was writing them down. I was like, at least for my hearing, my ears, the mid-range is a little bit too sharp at times. The high end is bright, but it's like missing that extra few decibels to really bring it to the nice level of shininess that I want. And the bass response is good, but like I said, it's not really above average, and I would rather them just give me a little bit of extra boost and oomph to really elevate things up a notch. And then I took them off and I noticed this little hole on the side, and then I looked closer and I saw BMT, which I assumed bass, mid, treble, and I was like, oh my god, they read my mind. But then I was also kind of confused because I thought to myself, well, I do want more bass and treble, so I guess if I flip these up, I'll get more bass and treble, but I don't want more mid-range, I want less mid-range. But what's interesting is when you flip on the bass switch, it does up the bass. When you flip up the treble switch, it does boost the treble, but when you flip up the mid-range switch, it actually cuts the mids. So a little bit confusing, but that's okay. And also it's one thing to remember. So yeah, I flipped up all three of them. I tried them all individually too to make sure that I was able to hear a difference, which I was, but when I flipped all three of them up, I was like, okay, now they're perfect. So I would definitely say that the tuning switches just totally brought these together for me. They're just a really great addition to be able to change the sound. In order to switch these, you've got to take this cover off the brush. It's got this kind of semi-sharp edge, and you've got to kind of weasel it in there and switch them. It does say on the box to not use anything besides the provided brush to alter the tuning switches because they claim that other objects or sharp objects could damage them or break them. So hopefully you just don't lose that. I will say, I think if you did, you could probably find something that might do the job, but I will listen to them. I mean, these are not cheap, so I would recommend just following their instructions and keeping these in good shape and whatnot. I would love to see tuning switches on more IEMs. Obviously, they can do it without charging you totally through the roof if these are, in a pretty moderate price range. And for me, they just made me so much more confident in these because I felt like if I ever have a problem with how they're handling a song in a certain way, Even though these are only 3 options, they are 3 very commonly needed options. We often need more or less bass, more or less mid, and more or less treble. And so it just helps a lot with maybe one song is just not hitting the spot in a certain way, and maybe you're not going to be able to get it to the absolute perfect place because there's, 3 different switches here, not like 15 of them, but you will be able to get it a heck of a lot closer than you might with another IEM. And that being said, I'm aware that there's a lot of EQ applications. You can change the EQ on the Spotify app. You can download apps to your phone, to your computer. Changing the frequencies of your headphones is not that difficult to do without the switches. But the switches to me feel better because they're more integrated and they are specified in their cuts and boost by the manufacturer, and they also just basically sound more natural of a boost. I find that often on EQs I use on iTunes or Spotify or whatever that I download, they just sound a bit too obvious. It's not very clean in terms of its integration with the sound. It doesn't blend well. But with these, the boost does not feel overly audible. Like, you just feel that there is more bass, but you don't feel like you're listening to an EQ'd pair of headphones. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Fiio's FH5s. I'm a big fan of these. They are great looking, they are great sounding, and they are very, very easy to customize. I think that a lot of brands could take a pointer from these guys and their ability to implement multiple, unique, at least I think, unique technologies of open back earbuds and tuning switches without charging, over $300. It just goes to show that you can really build a lot without spending, I'm not saying that $260 or $270, whatever it is cheap, but in the world of, fancy IEMs, we've seen much higher prices, certainly on this channel. And I definitely feel like I see some IEMs in a lower price range that feel like they're using their price as an excuse to be like, well, we just couldn't afford to do this and that. But Fiio is here to tell you, yes, you can. You can make some cool, interesting IEMs that have atypical abilities, and you don't need to make them super expensive, so more of us can have access to these fun gadgets and whatnot and get a cool listening experience, enjoy our music with, some heightened technology. I'm very curious to hear everyone else's thoughts on these. If you've tried them, if you have any questions about how they compare, totally leave me a comment. We can talk about these or post in the Major Hi-Fi forum. I will also link to Major Hi-Fi's IEM ranking tool per usual, where you can compare these to, an endless number of other IEMs based on sound signature and price and value and all those things. I will also link to my written article on these if you want to get really in depth about the sound signature and whatnot. That'll be in the description. And yeah, I'll be back very soon with some more reviews and videos. And until next time, happy listening.